Mamdani bent the knee. He punked the out of him. First of all, when you two men meet, you sit down if you're equals. You stand next to me with your hands crossed.
Yeah.
I'll tell you when to talk. And what, you ain't never punked nobody before? Oh, it's beautiful. I've made a stand right there. Don't move.
There's no faraway concept. ICE operates here in New York, in our courthouses, our workplaces. They skulk at 26 Federal Plaza, the same building where I waited in fear as my father had his citizenship interview.
Tyrus never steps into political debates quietly. He charges in and blows the doors wide open. The moment his focus locked onto Zohran Mamdani, the entire mood inside the room shifted instantly. This was not just another routine cable news discussion. It felt more like a heavyweight fighter marching into a packed arena, grabbing a bold manifesto, and demanding proof that massive promises could actually survive their first brutal collision with reality. Anyone expecting a calm and polite television disagreement quickly realized that expectation was completely wrong.
He's smiling because he's got him.
Yeah.
Mamdani didn't come in there. He sold, we call it wolf tickets. He sold all these, he's a this, he's a that. And when I get there, I'm going to tell him this. He went in the office. He's like, don't sit down. And what was that you said last February? Oh, sir, I was hoping if you could help me with my buses. And sure, let's go do a press conference. Like, that was ultimate Trump. That's how you are not such a non-threat that you can stand next to me like you're in an altar and a choir boy while I'm holding business at the big man desk. And
before going any further, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. This is something you definitely do not want to miss. Now, here is the setup. Zohran Mamdani has built a reputation as one of New York's most outspoken progressive voices. He speaks with strong passion about reform, fairness, and sweeping systemic change. Ideas that spread quickly across social media and often earn loud applause on college campuses. To his supporters, he represents the future of politics. To his critics, he looks more like a live experiment, showing just how far ideology can stretch before reality finally snaps it in half.
I think normally we would not condone booing, but I feel like the audience, you may boo away for 5 seconds if you'd like to. That is to cheat on a bench press. And listen, when you and I were hanging and banging today, we were down there hey, don't get it twisted. He might be a 27-year-old virgin, but he can throw bench with the best of them. And we were down there. And you were watching that video, and you were getting pumped up, and the blood was flowing, and 24-inch python started.
Then there is Tyrus, a former wrestler turned cultural commentator who has never been known for quietly holding back his opinions. He approaches political debates the same way he once stepped into the wrestling ring, shoulders squared, confidence high, and absolutely no patience for what he bluntly describes as economic fantasy.
I think he had it coming. Let's be honest. I don't think it was the constituents that voted for him that hurt him. I think it's the constituents that aren't here anymore because of him that hurt him.
Senior vote matters.
Yes, and somewhere shout out to Janice Dean. Not on our watch, mama. So having said that, but listen, Jesse, I want to add, you have very strong convictions and rules, and you don't.
When Zohran Mamdani's proposals began drawing serious attention, Tyrus didn't just sit back and roll his eyes in silence. Instead, he confronted them directly, publicly, repeatedly, and clearly on the record, arguing that these ideas might sound powerful and inspiring in theory, but quickly fall apart the moment basic math enters the conversation.
We can rely on our faith to offer an embrace of one another. After all, few forces hold as much power to extend humanity to all. As Dr. King once said, the church is the one place where a doctor ought to forget that he's a doctor. The church is the one place where the lawyer ought to forget that he's a lawyer. When the church is true to its nature, it says, whosoever will, let him come. That doctrine.
This is where the story becomes truly intriguing. On the surface, Zohran Mamdani's platform sounds extremely hard to argue against. After all, who would reject the idea of lower rent in a city where apartment prices can rival the yearly output of entire nations? Who wouldn't want major corporations contributing more so working families can finally breathe a little easier? At first glance, the message feels like pure common sense wrapped tightly in a powerful sense of moral urgency.
And what I mentioned it in the monologue, Tyrus, You're dealing with a 34-year-old guy with no world experience,
right,
who believes that there is such thing as government-sponsored childcare that's going to be
high
great.
quality.
High quality.
Sure.
That's why Kat said bro, because he's only 34.
But I'm sorry. I kind of feel like New York, you get what you get.
Yeah.
That's the best you could put forward. Mamdani didn't beat anyone.
Yeah.
He didn't, I mean, the Republican guy was still.
But Tyrus immediately dug into the fine print without hesitation. He argued that freezing rents without fixing the supply problem doesn't solve a housing crisis. It tightens the pressure even more. He questioned whether pushing taxes even higher on top earners in a city already seeing residents move to lower tax states might actually speed up that exodus. Suddenly, this was no longer just two voices clashing on television. It became a much larger question. Are bold promises real leadership or simply campaign poetry that fades the moment a real budget appears? Tyrus compared Mamdani's approach to promising everyone a steak dinner while the refrigerator sits completely empty. He described policies that win loud applause but crumble the moment they are put into action. Critics responded quickly, arguing that the housing crisis, the widening wealth gap, and the rising cost of living demand something dramatic. To them, Tyrus represents a comfortable cynicism that shrugs at inequality and calls it realism. They see Mamdani's proposals as necessary disruption rather than reckless risk. That is where the tension tightens even more, because both sides claim they are defending common sense. Tyrus argues you cannot spend your way out of structural problems without consequences. Mamdani argues you cannot cut your way out of injustice without making the wound even deeper. One side focuses on incentives and market reactions. The other focuses on moral responsibility and systemic reform.
And you were about to lose your mind. You were like, that's not even 45 pounds. You noticed that on each side. That looks to, what did you think it looked like, Joe?
That plate looked smaller than the ones I get at Golden Corral. It'd be 45 pounds. I'll say this, I'm a bodybuilder, Tyrus. I just started yesterday, but
Yes.
I am a bodybuilder. And
He's ahead of schedule.
yeah, the hardest part is that people laugh when you tell them that you're a bodybuilder. But I will say this, it was an embarrassment from start to finish, because after he failed to bench press the 135 pounds.
But Tyrus didn't stop with the policy numbers alone. He widened the focus to what he sees as a bigger pattern inside progressive politics, the belief that good intentions automatically create good outcomes. He warned that when cities push aggressive mandates, businesses often react in ways lawmakers never predicted. Landlords may convert units, investors may quietly step back, tax bases can shift before anyone notices what is happening. The ripple effects rarely stay contained. Then he raised a sharp question that cut straight through the noise. What happens if it doesn't work? That question hung heavily in the air, because it rarely receives a clear answer. For many New Yorkers, the current system already feels broken beyond repair. In that environment, bold reform does not seem extreme. It feels long overdue. So the clash becomes symbolic. Tyrus represents skepticism toward massive government intervention. Zohran Mamdani represents impatience with market-driven solutions. One side views caution as wisdom, the other sees caution as complicity.
Let him come is not limited to Christianity. Each of our faiths asks us the same. I think of Exodus 23:9, the words of the Torah. Thou shalt not oppress a stranger, for ye know the heart of a stranger, seeing ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. Few have stood so steadfast alongside the persecuted as Jewish New Yorkers. I think of Michael Schwerner and Andrew Goodman, who gave their lives alongside James Chaney so that all could exercise the right to the franchise. I think of Rabbi Heschel.
Here is the irony that makes this showdown impossible to ignore. Both men are fueled by deep frustration. Tyrus channels the anger of taxpayers who feel overburdened and highly skeptical of sweeping political experiments. Zohran Mamdani channels the frustration of renters and workers who feel squeezed from every direction and completely unheard. In many ways, they are speaking to two different fears living inside the same city, but Tyrus pushed his critique even further, arguing that progressive leaders often underestimate human behavior. Cap rents too tightly, he warned, and developers may stop building altogether, raise taxes too aggressively, and money can move quickly. often faster than lawmakers expect. To Mamdani's supporters, that warning sounds less like wisdom and more like surrender. That is exactly why audiences lean in so intensely, because this debate is not simple. It is not a clear hero versus villain story. Instead, it is a powerful collision between two very different beliefs about how cities truly function. Are cities delicate ecosystems that require careful balance through incentives? Or are they power structures that must be aggressively reshaped? Tyrus adds even more fire with his delivery. He does not speak in cautious academic language. He speaks in sharp headlines. He paints dramatic images of policies backfiring in spectacular ways. He insists slogans alone cannot pave roads or balance budgets. Critics say he oversimplifies complicated issues. Supporters insist he is the only one speaking the hard truth.
Never trust a man who yells on a microphone. There is no reason to yell and scream on a microphone, and it seems all of his emotional outbursts are within a foot of a camera. So this is also anyone who ever needed to make a motivational commercial for why you don't want to live in New York, this would be it. Now, New Yorkers have a choice. Mayor Adams, who has put the city before politics, that is where you're going. The streets are cleaning up. We're seeing reductions in crime.
Zohran Mamdani, however, operates in a completely different style. One built around detailed policy arguments and strong ideological framing. He connects New York's local struggles to broader national debates about capitalism, inequality, and public investment. He rarely steps back from bold language about systemic change. So when Tyrus challenges him, the clash goes far beyond personality drama. It becomes a symbolic battle between gradual reform and a full structural overhaul. There is also a deeper layer that keeps this story alive. New York is not just any city. It often signals where the rest of the country may be heading. If Mamdani's politics gain momentum there, similar movements across the nation could rise quickly. If his ideas stumble, critics will likely point to it as a warning for years to come. At the same time, Mamdani's rise reflects a genuine generational shift. Younger voters are tired of waiting. Many no longer believe market forces will eventually fix inequality on their own. They want change that is immediate, visible, and direct. That turns this confrontation into something generational as well as ideological. And here is the twist. Neither side can simply dismiss the other. Tyrus cannot ignore the real economic frustration fueling Mamdani's support. Mamdani cannot ignore the financial limits and behavioral realities that Tyrus keeps pulling back into the spotlight.
He then kicked a soccer ball at the men's festival. What's next? He's gonna pee sitting down? I don't know about that. But I do want to make the point that it's just not all bench press. When I'm at the gym, I max out on the thigh abductor machine, so much so that my nickname's actually Thigh Abductor at the gym, as well as KFC.
I'm not going to ask what the KFC stands for. I'm just going to assume it's some form of chicken.
This city sits directly between those two competing truths, which means this is nowhere close to a one-round fight. Instead, it has turned into a long, grinding debate about the future direction of urban politics across America. When Tyrus calls out Zohran Mamdani, it is not just a viral moment racing around the internet. It is a snapshot of a country arguing with itself about risk, responsibility, and the true limits of government power. On the surface, it may look like spectacle, but underneath that spectacle, there is serious substance. And the question that lingers once the noise fades is simple yet powerful. When voters walk into the voting booth, will they choose the stability of caution or the gamble of sweeping change? One thing is certain, this clash will not disappear quietly. Instead, it is amplifying a debate that was already simmering beneath the surface. Whether someone sees Tyrus as the voice of hard economic reality or Mamdani as the voice of overdue reform, the stakes stretch far beyond a single headline. New York right now feels like a pressure cooker. Rent keeps rising with no sign of slowing down. Small businesses struggle under growing costs and regulations. Public services are stretched thin. In that environment, Mamdani's message lands with force because it promises something direct and immediate. Intervention. Freeze the rents.
Disgrace governor he only won by 13.
Yeah.
And you just there's 8 million people between here and Times Square
Who didn't vote.
Yeah. So it's kind of like Was this
Tyrus looks at that same situation and sees something completely different. He sees fragility. In his view, the city runs on capital, development, and carefully balanced incentives. And his warning is blunt. You cannot punish the engine and expect the car to suddenly accelerate. He frames the entire debate around consequences rather than emotion. People may desperately want affordable housing, but if the policies meant to create it end up crushing new construction or pushing landlords out completely, the shortage does not improve. It actually grows worse. He argues that political movements often underestimate how quickly money relocates once it starts to feel unwelcome. That warning resonates in a country already watching companies move headquarters, high earners change residency, and investors rethink urban markets. Tyrus connects these developments and warns that New York may be nearing a tipping point, now all while working families struggle to keep up. From his perspective, protecting incentives stops looking like defending the wealthy and starts looking like protecting the foundation holding everything together. That sharpens the central argument even more. Is the housing crisis mainly a supply issue requiring careful market balance, or a power issue demanding direct intervention? Tyrus firmly stands with the first view. Zohran Mamdani stands firmly with the second.
to the same old? So, and his socialist is the same as Bernie's socialist and all socialists. Socialism for you, not for me. He's going to make sure he's in the mansion. He's going to make sure he's making money and all these other kinds, and everyone else is supposed to share and attack the rich. So again, this is a horrible look for New York. I hope that the people, this is why I don't live in New York. Hopefully they'll make good choices and do what's best for the people, not party. Because this guy, the only thing I see him do is yell and scream. And Jesse, I'm hoping that I get approval from you to add that to the list of.
As this debate pushes deeper, the philosophical divide only grows wider. Tyrus speaks in terms of trade-offs. Every policy carries a cost. Every new rule changes behavior. And every tax increase reshapes incentives in ways leaders cannot ignore. Zohran Mamdani speaks in the language of justice, arguing that if a system produces deep inequality, it must be reshaped even if that disruption unsettles existing comfort. Neither viewpoint is trivial. Both carry real weight and conviction, yet they point toward very different futures for the city. Tyrus also taps into something cultural that resonates with many people. He presents himself as the voice of those who feel constantly lectured by elite progressivism, people who believe basic common sense has been replaced by ideological purity tests. Then he adds another sharp point about scale. Proposing sweeping change in theory is one thing. Implementing it inside the largest and most complex city in the country, where budgets are massive, unions are powerful, and markets react instantly, is a completely different challenge. His warning is direct. Experiments that fail at that scale cannot simply be reversed.
And going into a situation knowing you have no idea what you're doing and doing it anyways because you'll just wing it.
Yeah.
Now that's bench press, right? And luckily he had someone there to curl that weight off him. Is that how you're going to handle law enforcement? That's how you're going to handle immigrants? That's going to, now all of a sudden federal grocery stores make sense coming from a guy who has no idea what he's doing. He just does things. And how can you lead if you actually don't have any experience in anything?
Zohran Mamdani would likely answer that argument directly. Massive problems require massive solutions. Making small adjustments around the edges will never bring rents down when prices have doubled within just a decade. From his perspective, bold policy is not reckless experimentation. It is a long overdue correction of priorities that can no longer be ignored. That is why this clash feels larger than either individual. It reflects a national struggle between reform and revolution, between managing capitalism and fundamentally reshaping it. The irony is that both sides are responding to failure. Tyrus reacts to policy overreach that he believes threatens stability. Mamdani reacts to policy hesitation that he believes allows inequality to continue. So when Tyrus challenges him, he is not just confronting one politician, he is confronting an entire movement. And movements rarely accept those challenges quietly. The conversation escalates quickly, yet beneath all the noise, one stubborn question remains. What actually works? Not what sounds inspiring, not what trends online, what truly delivers improvement without creating a brand new crisis. Tyrus insists economic gravity cannot simply be ignored. Mamdani insists moral urgency cannot keep waiting.
They don't care who the mayor is. They had a mayor who was law and order. Now we got to get rid of him. He likes the police too much.
Yeah.
Now they're going to have a mayor in who says high quality child care.
And no police.
Yeah. There's another word for that. It's called trafficking.
Yeah.
So no one is going to leave their child with an underpaid, angry person. You just leave them with your wife. But I'm just saying, what? The wives are underappreciated.
Voters now find themselves standing right between those competing arguments, weighing frustration against risk. If Zohran Mamdani's vision succeeds, it could reshape urban policy across the entire country. If it fails, critics like Tyrus will likely point to the fallout as lasting proof that ideology cannot override economic reality. Either way, the stakes stretch far beyond a single district, because cities across America are watching closely. They face the same housing shortages, the same affordability pressure, and the same conflicts over taxes and development. That turns New York into a testing ground whether anyone volunteered for that role or not. Tyrus clearly understands the symbolic weight of that stage, which is exactly why his criticism never arrives quietly. He frames this moment as a real crossroads between grounded realism and a high-risk political experiment. At its core, the debate is philosophical. It asks whether voters believe stability should be protected at almost any cost, or whether disruption is necessary to correct a system that feels deeply unbalanced. As this clash spreads through interviews, rallies, and online conversations, one thing becomes clear. Headlines may eventually move on and the noise may fade, but the tension underneath will remain. Somewhere between caution and courage lies the future of cities like New York, and the entire country is watching closely to see which path arrives there first.